appreciate you for looking at all these individuals as we're praying. We are doing this. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. We are excited. You can see we got some amazing individuals to the side of us. So before we get started, let's introduce these amazing individuals.
All right, cool. Go ahead.
I go. My name is Nathan.
My name is Nathan. I've been a friend of Mario's for about 3 years now. We go to church in Montebello.
All right, yeah. So I met Mario from a Korean fried chicken place. We were both dining there, and then his fellowship group goes there regularly, and it was just he just invited me to the podcast, so it's fun. I've been growing up in the church since I was born into the church, and yeah, just figuring out my relationship with Christ as an adult now. So just on the journey, man.
So
Awesome. With journey comes excitement, full of adventure. With God, anything's possible. So, Bible verses. Usually we talk about Bible verses that have been misused. Today we're switching it up. We're talking about Bible verses that have helped us out or has been on the back of our mind for a while. So I'll start with John 16:33. The Bible verse starts with, I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. Life is tough. That's a voice crack right there. But what do we do when situations don't work out? Do we just pity? Do we hide in a corner? Sometimes we do, but at the end of the day, life moves on whether we want it to move on or not. And the greatest thing about life and being with God is knowing that God is with us no matter what. There's some stuff personally that I've gone through in the past, just this past few months, and the fact that we're still here, still smiling, still learning, and just enjoying the small things. It's just that reminder that God is still with us, and it's exciting. With every trial comes the possibility to be great.
I'm looking at the verse right now, and even like verse 32, it says, a time is coming, in fact, and has come when you will be scattered, each to your own home. You will leave me all alone, yet I'm not alone, for my Father is with me. And then he says, I told you these things so that you may have peace in me. So pretty much Jesus is saying that he's giving us this reassurance because he's given us the expectation for us to go through trials. And I feel like a lot of times people, especially when they first come to Christ, they have an expectation where life is going to become perfect. And it was never promised that. But what will be perfect is a peace that Christ gives us, because it's not about the storm. It's about who's with us during the storm.
It's huge. It's not about, you say that one more time about the storm. It's not about going through the storm. It's about who you go with.
Who's with? Yeah. I like the way you said it better. Like that.
There's another thing I remember our pastor would talk about. He says that we all go through storms in life. We either are going through one, we just came out of one, or we're about to go into one. So be prepared.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think what you said too is there's another. It reminds me of another verse in the Bible. I think it's in James. It talks about like every trial produces perseverance.
Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything.
But not only is a trial a growing experience because you go through it with Christ, but at the end of it, it always some way forms a character in one way or another, even if it's minor or whatever the case is. My mindset is like, if something is not killing you, like actually physically killing you, then it's not the end. So there has to be some type of benefit to it.
Very true.
I would see.
It's not killing you. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, so here's my question. So what about Job and the trials he went through?
That's a
right, because his trials almost, well, it killed his family. Okay, that's huge. Okay, and all of his resources, and then I mean, it did physically harm him, you know?
Yeah,
And
no,
at times in the Bible, martyrs will literally die for their faith. So, what do you mean by, in that case, it produces a perfect faith and things like that?
well, like, I pulled up that verse in James, but to what you're saying though, it all goes back to perspective. Like, for example, Job lost his whole family. But it's a matter of perspective. Like, just because we may think that's the worst thing that could possibly happen to us, in the eyes of God, it might not. In Isaiah, it says God's ways are higher than our ways, His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So the things that we may feel like are the end or the worst case scenario really aren't. And in the case of Job specifically, he at the end of the story, everything is restored to him, I think, tenfold. So like, yes, it does suck to lose your family. Yes, all of this happened as a test of Job when he passed. But at the end of the day, this life isn't the only life that we have. It's an eternal life. So the loss of it may be heavy, even in the case of martyrs, but it's not the end. So I think it's a matter of perspective of what you consider the worst case scenario, and having an eternal perspective rather than just a temporary perspective in this life. I'll pull up the verse I was talking about, but you go ahead, Mario, if you want to add on to that.
Interesting enough, that is a great point. That yes, Job went through many hardships and many trials to the point where his family was murdered, where he had nothing left. Though, like Nathan said, God provided tenfold to him. Not to mention, too, our brain is from a human perspective. We don't have God's brain, and part of me thinks, if we have the brain of God, how will we see life? There are so many things that to this day, many scholars and people who have followed Christ from the day they were born, they still don't know. Like, go an example with the Holy Trinity. There's so many things that we still don't really understand, or we're having a hard time finding the logic. And sometimes it's not about the logic, it's about how is this being used? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And perspective is a big deal. And it's tough for us Christians as well to talk about what God's perspective is, you know. And what justifies certain things, you know, like his family was killed. And so does it justify that he just gets another one, you know, after going through a trial? All these different questions, right? But it originally does come down to, it is a faith, and there are going to be some things that may sound or seem outrageous, you know, and that's the human perspective. So it's tough, and you know, what's the bridge you're going to die on, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's healthy to have questions like those, and I think, like, the way to see God's, at least for me, I look at the Bible like as an answer key. Like, for example, when Mario brought that up, I thought of another verse, because the Bible is full of that. It's full of, like, any question that you have, you can find an answer in some other part. But I think those questions are good and healthy questions, because I don't think anything good comes from just pretending like you don't have a question, because God's not afraid of our question. But this is what the verse said in James. It's James 1:2-4. It says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." So that's what it was saying. And this is someone, James died a martyr. But he's saying, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. This is during the early church. Perseverance, let perseverance finish its work, and you mean let your character be built through this, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So that was the verse I was referring to. But what you said is right. Does it justify Job losing his family? I don't think so. Does it hurt? I'm pretty sure Job was just as hurt. I don't think it's not like, if you ever had a pet that died, if your dog dies, getting a new dog doesn't make you forget about the old dog. But again, that's where times like that, or stories like that, just make me be like, okay, well, God has a higher perspective. You know, it's hard to tap into it, because this life is everything to us, but eternity is way longer than this. So whatever God has in mind, we have to first start off with the acceptance that God knows what He's doing, and His ways are better than our ways. But I think you brought up a really good question, so thank you for bringing those up, bro.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Job's an interesting chapter of the Bible.
For sure.
The smallest books in the Bible are the ones that have the most information. Go over another Bible verse.
Go for it, Alan.
Okay, cool. So I will go over 17:10. This is from the one I have screenshotted is the New Living Translation. So I'll just say it. Okay, a single rebuke does more for a person of understanding than 100 lashes on the back of a fool.
Mm.
So I love the Proverbs, like great little wisdom bombs, right? But specifically what this verse stands out to me is that don't talk to people who are foolish, really, because they aren't going to get the concept. No matter how much you try to get across to them, either your perspective or someone else's perspective, or just flat out, maybe they did something crazy. Sometimes it's not worth it if the person doesn't have their heart there. So what do you guys think about that view?
I think what you're saying is spot on. There's a saying that goes, don't argue with a fool, because from a distance, people can't tell who is who. Because like what you're saying, like you can try to argue with someone, but if they don't want to be convinced, there's nothing you can do to convince them. And that's the same thing, like, that's something that you go through in like relationships too, where you're trying to, convince somebody. Even may seem like perfect sense to you, but if someone's not hearing it, you can allow yourself to get so frustrated, at least myself to get so frustrated trying to get this person to get it. And over time, I just had to understand, like, it's not about, you have to know when someone wants to receive it and doesn't, and you have to be okay with it. You have to be at peace with yourself about it. So I think that was a great point you made about that. And also on the flip side, the rebuke. What's the version you're reading?
This was the New Living Translation because it's a screenshot, but we can look up other translations as well.
I just wanted to. All right, last. What's it? 3:17. What?
It's Proverbs 17:10.
10. Okay.
So this comes to a point where, okay, yeah, sure. So you can't agree with someone, either they're emotional right now, or for whatever reason, it's futile to argue, right? And so the thing is then, do you end up just cutting ties, or do you allow yourself to tolerate, or to what do you call it? Come to coexist or something. There was a word there, but yeah, and it's tough. Relationships,
right? It goes back, leading into your perspective, and going back similar with the other verse we're talking about, the book of Job, that it goes back to perspective. Moving with Proverbs 17:10, talking about talking with someone that doesn't really understand what you're going through. How do I say this? We don't really know what someone else's mindset's at. No matter, even if, like, for example, we're preaching to someone, we're trying to talk to someone about God. We've gone through so many trials and tribulations where this individual that's brand new, he just hears about God for the first time. They have no clue what all these versions of the Bibles are. They just know, or they're just learning, like, okay, God exists. What now? Does that mean I can do everything I want? Does that mean I have to lose everything to be with God? There's so many questions that these individuals have, and it's crucial to understand where this new individual is coming from, right?
Yeah. Another thing is, it's we have to be careful also to not parallel them with what is known as foolish either. Sometimes people really just have questions, Yeah, not saying you're implying that, but for viewers out there, you know.
Yeah, no, I think what do you guys think are some characteristics of someone being foolish in the moment, I guess? Like, for example, how would you know or identify to apply this verse in a scenario?
I think definitely if you sense anger, right?
Mm.
When someone can't think clearly, if they're under some influence, right? If someone's even overworked or tired, that's very common in society today.
I feel another one too is that, excuse me, we respond on emotion rather than logic. So for kind of going with how Alan mentioned about anger, many of us, when we're angry, we respond quickly. We respond with aggression, depending on how people respond, handle anger. Other people who are emotional, who are sad, who are hurt, they usually cave in or they outlash. They use their emotions rather than using their mind and taking a step back. That's how I see a fool sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah. In the beginning, it says a single rebuke does more for a person of understanding. How do you think like we ourselves could have an understanding mindset rather than a foolish mindset? Do you guys have any experience with that where you saw that you were being the fool in the scenario and how to get to be the person of understanding?
You mean like if we're being labeled as the fool or what?
No, like how do you check yourself? Like, for example, if I'm being hard-headed, how do I check myself to not only not be hard-headed in the moment, but be able to, because the first part about this, it says a single rebuke does more for a person of understanding. So another way to say, I guess, like modernly would be like a single criticism does more for a person of understanding. So how do you become how do you build your character to be a person that can accept criticism easily from just one criticism? Like, I guess what I'm saying is, I know for me, for a really long time, well, I guess it started with the initiative to grow. So once I decided in my mind that I wanted to grow, it was real easy to hear criticism from anybody because I don't take it as like a shot at my character. I just see it as an opportunity to grow. I used to tell people that all the time, like, I'll take advice from a crackhead on the street because if it's bad advice, I just won't take the advice. But there's got to be at least one thing I can take from it. You know, that's not saying I'm bad about crackheads or nothing like that. But I'm just, as an example, as an extreme. And so I was just wondering if you guys have any experience where you've seen yourself grow in that area, and then how did you do it to become a person of understanding? Like for me, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but for me, I know like one thing that helps is that if I want to grow in something, I don't get offended by rebukes or criticism almost at all in most scenarios, because I'm just looking for things to grab onto to better myself and being, introspective.
You reminded me of a quote a wise man would say: "You take in the meat and you spit out the bones." A big thing in society and myself that I still need to practice is listening to others. Granted, we may know more than others, though sometimes we need to forget what we know so we can learn something new. For example, reading the Bible. Some of us are experts, know every single book of the Bible and know every verse. This has happened to all of us, I'm pretty sure. When we reread a certain chapter in the Bible, God reveals something totally different. And it amazes us that no matter how much we know, we don't know anything. And then another quote a wise man would say that the person that knows they know nothing is wise. I think that's how it goes.
I think that to answer your question, Nathan, I think if just bring it back to the Lord. If you're strongly rooted in Him, you have a solid relationship with Him, and if you have a high emotional intelligence, you should be able to understand where that person is coming from, despite their fire or whatever tongue they bring, and to really internalize. If you're able to, oftentimes there's a lot of critics out in the world, but then we also have the huge inner critic, right? Which sometimes can be Satan, right? Sometimes it's not just us trying to survive or get by. Sometimes it really is Satan, or it's not true, whatever we're believing in a critic, right? So if you're able to develop in that, and if you're able to do that in accordance to what God says, then I think that that'll really help you handle criticism.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Most definitely. Speaking about Bible verses, Nathan, is there a Bible verse that we would like to go over? This will probably be our last Bible verse.
Yeah. So this is the first verse I ever memorized. It's Isaiah 55:10-11. And this is the NIV version. It says, "As the rain and snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent." And so the reason why this verse is still important to me, I think this, like I came across this verse for the first time, I think in 2016, maybe even 2017, but either way, it was 5 or 6 years ago. And the reason why it's still so relevant to me today is because this is a verse that gave me the revelation that if I receive a word from God, it had a purpose attached to it, even if it's something small. And it's not because of anything that I wanted to accomplish. It's literally because the way I read the Bible is, like I said, like an answer key. So if it says something, then I believe it. So it says, as a rain and snow come down from heaven. So as it rains on the grass, when it rains on the grass, the grass gets green, the plants grow, they flourish. He says, just as sure as when the rain falls on the earth and you see the result of it, the same thing when my word comes out from my mouth, I sent it out. It didn't just get to you randomly. It has a purpose attached to it. So when it gets to you, it's going to return to me with the purpose that I sent it for. And so that was just like one of my first revelations that I received from the Bible. And I don't even think I was really in church at that time. I was reading the Bible, before, and it just stuck out to me like that. And it was really a revelation, but for that reason. If you guys want to add on to that at all.
It goes back to things have.
What was the verse again? I wanna pull it up on my screen.
It's Isaiah 55, verses 10-11.
Okay. It goes back to God has a plan for everything, whether we know it or not. And you Nathan, you using that example of the snow falling down. It happens for a reason. Whether we like the snow, whether we don't, it's helping out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I've really gleaned from the Bible, at least, is extreme proactivity. There's a lot of, like, so far we've already talked about trials. We're now talking about the elemental forces of this world and how it can be crazy. Well, as the rain and snow come down from heaven, as COVID, is within this world or whatever. Okay, just as a parallel, right? It's just there might be a purpose in it, and maybe we can be proactive in it. And it's that whole thing, where people share their testimony. This happened to me, but then God made something out of it, and I was open to it, right? So
yeah, no, for sure. I would say too, a big part of this, because when I do my devotionals, and so in the very beginning, so a devotional time is just like a time in the morning where God, you read a Bible or whatever the case is, and then whatever speaks to you, reflect on it. But for a little bit in the beginning, when I first started doing them, I would do them more like Bible study-ish, meaning like I would break the verse down, understand what it means and stuff like that. But then there was a transition where instead of reading the Bible only just to analyze it, I would pray for a word. So it's like, God, can you speak to this situation in my life, or can you give me a word for this specific thing? And that's where this verse for me comes into play all the time, because sometimes you'll be doing your Devo and it'll be the most random thing. I have a great tomorrow. You've heard this a couple times. I had a testimony about when this was like 2018. I had left my job and I was living off of savings for some time. And I had some money in the stock market. So this was like after like 6 months after I left, my savings were going down. I had like, the money was in a secure stock. So it was always gonna go up slowly but surely. So I just kept that like as like a rainy day bag, meaning like if I lose all my money in my savings, at least I have that money. And so I'm doing my Devo one morning, and there was a small part in there. It literally said, plow your unplowed fields. And I wrote it down. I might have it in one of these notebooks somewhere around here. But anyways, I wrote it down. I kept doing my Devo. I thought nothing of it. And that part kept sticking out to me. I was like, okay, plow your unplowed fields. And I was like, so I didn't do a reflection on it. I looked like, okay, if I take this literally, what are my unplowed fields in my life? My stock market, somebody I don't touch. And so I literally write with an arrow. This is on a Friday morning. I write with an arrow, I put sell stocks, and I leave it at that. But I don't do it. So then Monday morning comes around, I'm doing my Devo again, and the verse comes back to me. I said, no, let me go check the stock real quick. Come to find out. So at this time, I had put money in there, and it doubled right before this happened. So I made double my money just from putting it aside. At that time, I checked, and it went down to like 25% or something like that. So I didn't have double anymore. It was like a 25% increase only. So for example, if it was, I'll just say the number, it don't matter. I put 3,000 in there from savings, and then it ended up being 6,000. When I checked that morning, it was like 4,500 around there or something like that. Or like, it was like 5,000. So it's a significant dip. And I was like, oh, this is not looking too good. But then again, the stock always goes up and down, but at the end of the day, it always ends up going up. And so I leave it. I still don't sell it. Later that day, I'm just walking around, and then I'm like, yo, let me really check this thing, because someone's telling me that I should really sell this. I looked, it went from like 125 a share to 100 a share. So that's already after it dropped from like 150 a share to 125 to 100 in one day, which is super rare. This is not like a penny stock. It's like super rare. So I sell it, right? And then I end up taking home like 4,000 or something like that. I check it at like 5,000. I check it at like 5 p.m. Bro, the stock went from 100 and something in the morning to guess how much at night? It was freaking $5 a share. Meaning and the stock became liquefied, meaning if you didn't sell it, you only get how many shares you had by $5, and it closed out. So that was from a devotional that I was doing when God said plow your unplowed fields. This was not no random thing. This was called it was based on the S&P 500. So it's just like a stock that if the S&P 500 is doing good, it does good. I never looked into why it crashed or whatever the case was. It wasn't like, it was a bunch of people invested into this thing. It wasn't like a small thing at all. So it would be like if Apple stock went down to $5 a share. So it's like things that are unheard of. But the purpose of what I'm saying is I received that from a devotional. And then on top of that, had I listened right away, I would have saved myself like $2,000. But the greater purpose is what I'm saying is this verse applies to me. You know, that's just one thing when it comes to like money or whatever. But any word that I receive from God, it's a purpose from it. And I focused on the word part. So it's like, what is he telling me through the Bible? And those are the things that I try to be more sensitive to, even if they don't make sense in the moment, because I know, okay, well, if I received it, then I'm believing that it was sent. It wasn't just something I came across that just like, stood out to me. But that's really where this verse applies for me.
It's an awesome story.
Would have been awesome if had I saved my money.
Honestly, right?
and
Oh man, it's crazy. It goes back to God has a plan for everything, whether we know it or not. It's amazing. Have faith, stay confident. It's all we can do. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you guys are interested, just read the Bible. Reach out to your local church. It's pretty self-explanatory. Take the first step. take that leap of faith. Again, if you guys are going through a trial right now, it's going to get better from here. There's always a rainbow around. There's a rainbow around every corner. Basically, if there's a storm you're going through, you can always get out of it. Pass a smile, stay safe, drop a comment if you have any questions. Thank you guys for watching again, and see you guys next time.